Nashville SC had a successful 2025 season, winning the US Open Cup and comfortably getting into the playoffs, losing to eventual winners Inter Miami. This success was built on the backs of Surridge and Hany Mukhtar, who both had all-star seasons. But what did this success look like in the tactics and in the data? What limited them from doing better, and what can we expect in a new look in 2026? Surridge and Mukhtar carried Nashville last season as the best duo in the league. Out of Nashville's total 57 goals in MLS, Surridge and Mukhtar contributed to 51. There was really nothing happening in attack without these two players. So how did they score these goals? First, we need to look at how they played. Regardless of what the official lineup said, they basically always ended up in this 4-2-2-2 with Mukhtar and Surridge up top, two hard-working attacking mids who provided a lot of verticality, two defensive midfielders who didn't offer much in the way of ball progression but would recycle the ball and defend the back four, while the two wingbacks would get up and high and really participate in the attack. In this setup, Nashville scored basically three types of goals. One, probably the most frequent, is just a long ball over the top with the quality of Mukhtar or Surridge to take it down and score, or combine with a teammate to create a chance. They were so good at finding each other with these long balls over the top because they both have the pace to get them behind and the quality to bring down basically whatever ball gets sent over. If it's good, bad, doesn't really matter. They have the quality to take it down and find a pass or a shot. The second is running at the other team in transition, getting numbers forward, the two attacking mids, the two strikers, and the two outside backs, and getting the ball down the wings and finding cutbacks, crosses in. But importantly, these goals were scored in chaotic moments when there were more quick changes of possession. The third kind of more repeated goal that Nashville scored was in more settled possession when the ball is out in these spaces on the sides and they find an early cross in from Lovitz or Nahar where Surridge is occupying the far center back and the outside back, and Mukhtar plus and another attacking mid or two are in the box to either win the second ball or the first ball depending on where it lands. Now these were the main types of goals. There were times when Nashville had the quality to work the ball from back to front through possession, but that's not really what they were trying to do most of the time. And those three goals that we talked about were the main repeated ways that they were getting goals, so what they probably worked on more often. And this play led to a lot of goals and led to a huge Open Cup win and the playoffs, but there were still plenty of things that weren't great last season. So when we look at last year, what things need to be improved? The first thing I think of is a lack of identity. They were not really a pressing team, they weren't a possession team, and they weren't a defensive team. We can look at pretty much every stat that shows a team's identity and find them in the middle of the pack. Apart from progressive passing, they don't stand out in any statistic. They're not really controlling games through possession, with middle of the pack field tilt and passes per possession. They're not pressing or placing any particular emphasis on defense with their passes per defensive action or just their defensive actions. And their passing statistics are in the middle of the pack. In fact, in every one of these graphs, they're right next to Atlanta United, which is really not where you want to be last season. So the difference between Nashville and Atlanta through the eyes of these statistics is essentially just the form of their DPs. So if their form drops at any point, it's not great. It's not really a consistent or a sustainable way of playing. And we saw throughout last season that this lack of identity manifested itself in a back-footed strategy. Nashville would respond to the way the other teams played, specific to each game, and that's fine, it can work, but it's not something you want to rely on when all you're relying on is the quality of the DPs and hoping that their form stays on fire. So this lack of identity was one element of their inconsistency last season. The other element was their poor defensive structure. So out of possession, they used this 4-3-3 sort of mid-block, so they didn't sit deep and they didn't really high press. The problem with this is that if you have three players in the front line of this block and you're not really applying pressure, it's going to be easy to play through and find players into the second line, and then suddenly you have three players who are useless in defense. Usually what you're trying to do when you have three in this front block is you're trying to pressure the back line and force turnovers high up the field because you have a numbers advantage against the two center backs, or you're cutting the field in half. It's a 3v3 in this area. But when you're not high pressing, and you're just sort of sitting off, there's kind of no point to have 3 players up here, because again, it's just so easy to just find the pass through here, and now they're all out of the game. Here's an example against San Diego. San Diego have the ball in the back line. We know they're gonna wanna build out. Nashville have their first lineup very high, which you might assume means they're going to high press, but they're kind of sitting off and not really pressuring. Maybe they're waiting for a pressing trigger. You see Mukhtar is ready to press, so maybe they're just waiting for something. But you also have these huge gaps between the lines of pressure. Gonna be pretty easy to play through if they don't step up in pressure. The ball goes out to this right side, and Surridge is here, but he's not really applying pressure. He's just sort of jogging over to where the ball is. And we can see this huge gap behind the front line that has players open and that San Diego can easily play through. Now, this isn't necessarily a problem yet because this player could easily cover this player that runs in here, but there's no communication. So instead, Tag Seth is following out. He doesn't cover. Everyone just moves towards the ball into this massive space that they've created in this area, which then is going to leave a space behind here. And the space San Diego ends up working the ball into. They've taken out all of these players and now can run at the back line. Nashville end up fouling to end this play. Sometimes they did come out with a high press using this shape, notably against Inter Miami in the second game of the playoffs. And when they did that, it worked really well, which kind of made me question why they weren't doing that all of the time. Especially because when you're in this 4-2-2-2 shape, it lends really easily to going a 4-2-4, which is a really common pressing, or just a 4-4-2 if you want to go a little more defensive and do that mid block. It makes more sense to do a 4-4-2. So this improvement of defensive structure is something that I'm going to look to see in 2026. But at the very least, they need to change from this non-committal 4-3-3 to something that makes more sense. At least decide what you want to do. You can't have these huge gaps between the lines and make it too easy to play through. And in possession, we can see that their rest defense structure is poor because when they're building up, they tend to concede a lot after losing the ball and getting hit on the counter. In this example against Cincinnati, we can see there's absolutely no pressure on the ball. Lovitz has it nice in space, and he can play number of passes, make a switch. There's no pressure on the ball. And in this frame, Lovitz is looking long. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. He has his 2 runners in, send a ball into the channel. Like we said, that's a way that Nashville scored a lot of their goals with the balls over the top. The problem is what the rest of the players are doing off the ball. Specifically, these 3 players in this space here. No one is covering this space. We have the center backs very far away from each other. They're not aligned, and nobody is here to cover in the event that maybe Cincinnati wins the ball and sends it right back over. That long ball ends up deflecting off of the Cincinnati player, and they're on an attack, and fine, they end up getting back behind the ball and eventually make it into a 6v5. But here they should be asking, where's the danger? Who's holding the line? We see that Zimmerman's the last defender back, but nobody is in line with him, which is already a red flag. The left center back and the defensive midfielder are both covering the same exact space, and his back is entirely to the ball, and nobody is picking up this runner. The ball ends up being played in, and 1, 2, 3, 4 players are caught completely flat-footed, either going the wrong way or just standing still. Zimmerman is about 5 yards deeper than everyone else. Nobody's holding the line, which keeps Denke onside and leaves space for Brennan to run into, and it ends up being a goal. If this happened once, I would just chalk it up to individual errors and a lapse of concentration, but it happened repeatedly in a lot of the games that I was watching. And when it happens repeatedly, it becomes a coaching issue and something that they really need to solve in 2026. You can't be a consistent team challenging for the cup, challenging for Supporter Shield if you're gonna ship goals like this. So enough about what went wrong in 2025. Let's look at what there is to be excited about for 2026. The obvious place to start is the biggest intra-league signing this offseason, Christian Espinoza. He has the most key passes and expected assists last season, more than Messi, and has consistently ranked in the top of chance creation throughout his career in MLS. And he did so in the 2025 season in many different positions. This makes me confident that he'll fit in with Mukhtar and Surridge. If we look at his position map, Mukhtar likes to mostly play in the central areas, while Espinoza is comfortable out wide, in a more attacking position, or in a more defensive position. Surridge also got much better when moved more into the central area, but still favors the left, which works with Mukhtar and Espinoza both favoring the right. If we look at their progressive passes, we can also see that while Espinoza and Mukhtar both play them from the right, Mukhtar gets around in the central areas and plays more through balls through the center more, while Espinoza plays more long balls from the right and more balls down the right channels, while Mukhtar is more in the central areas. Where there actually is a conflict is with Andy Nahar. Him and Espinoza both make the same kind of progressive passes from this right side, mostly crosses into the box, and they end up taking around the same positions in attack. And here might be where BJ Callahan needs to do some problem solving, because we can't have two players trying to do the same thing in attack. People have been excited about these two players combining, but if they're gonna be trying to occupy the same exact areas, playing in a similar way, it might end up being more of a hindrance than a help if we can't get Espinoza into different areas, or maybe employ Nahar in a different way. Espinoza could also potentially move out left and have something that looks more like this. As he has played in this position before, I have confidence that his versatility would allow him to play over there as well, and that way we wouldn't be messing with the areas that have worked last season. We would just be adding another element off the left. And regardless of ability, there's always going to be a hit to the stability of the team when a new attacking dynamic is added. You never know how exactly it's going to work out. And speaking of stability, another huge hit to the team is the loss of Walker Zimmerman, who they have already replaced with Maxwell Woledzi? Maxwell Woledzi? I don't know. I'll have to wait for a commentator to pronounce that. I do have faith in Nashville recruiting in this market, with Tag Seth being such a huge success. And Woledzi has been a huge success in Norway, making the team of the season both times there at a young age. So I do have faith in this signing from a recruitment standpoint, but there are a few things that make me question the immediate success that he might have. The first reservation I have is that he comes from a system where he was playing in a back three on the outside, which gives a lot more freedom to burst forward as you have two center backs to cover you. It gives you more room to be aggressive. It gives you more room to make mistakes. The other is that his probable center back partner, Palacios, is also a very aggressive center back who likes to drive forward. Usually in a center back partnership, you want one player to be super aggressive and one to be calm and composed. If there are two aggressive center backs, it might be a bit of a learning curve, so they both don't go forward. They need to know when one is going forward and when the other needs to cover. Not to say that this won't work, it's just gonna require a learning curve from both players. And the last element changing from last season is the goalkeeping situation. Joe Willis has been a stalwart for Nashville over the last 5 years, but being 37 and not outstanding in any particular area, it makes sense for Nashville to start working in a replacement. A goalkeeping change at the same time as a major loss of leadership in the back line leaves some questions as to who's going to be organizing the defense. Goalkeepers and center backs especially can't be looked at only in terms of stats. Leadership and confidence are huge elements to defensive stability of the team. After the loss of Zimmerman, if Willis isn't the starting keeper, who's going to be organizing the back line? So with last year's successful season and their moves in the transfer market, what really can we expect from Nashville in 2026? The number one thing is inconsistency to start the season. They've lost leadership in defense, and they're bringing in a huge new attacking element in Espinoza. It's going to take some time to learn how him, Mukhtar, and Nahar are going to get the best out of each other. So we shouldn't expect it to be firing from the first game. And with that in mind, we can also expect experimentation in the formation. It'll likely be the 4-2-2-2 of last season, or a 4-2-3-1 in some form, maybe a 4-3-3. We might have some changes to start the season just to find out where all these players will work best together. We'll probably see Surridge, Mukhtar, and Espinoza making up the front three of the 4-3-3 out of possession, but I really hope to see Callahan move away from that and try to adopt a different out of possession structure. future. Really, this season for me is a test of BJ Callahan as a coach. He got the good results last season, now he has the players. This is a win now team. Can he do it? But if they hope to beat teams like Miami, LAFC, and Vancouver to the Cup, they'll need to sort out their defensive issues and become a team that doesn't rely solely on the output of Mukhtar and Surridge.